Oh my god. I just haven't read a book of that quality in a really long time. A lot of people in my comments were like, yeah, I thought I started a romantic comedy, and I was like crying on the beach. Like, people brought this for their like vacation read. Hi, hello everyone. My name is Carrie. Welcome to the video. Thank you so much for being here. I just woke up from a nap. One of those naps, it's like 4 p.m. When you're out on a hot summer day, you come home and you just knock out. I was so deeply asleep that like my teeth feel like they're still asleep. Like whoa, I'm out of it. So welcome, you are helping me wake up. We are gonna see how this plays out for a video. New setup a little bit. I got a little stool so that my candle warmer that you might not even know that I own, my candle warmer is no longer on the floor or precariously perched upon one of these stacks of books. It has a solid place to stand. That's great. I had a really good reading month. I made a lot of videos of live reactions. So some of these might be repeats for you. If you haven't watched my videos, they're there for you. YouTube is being really not cute towards this channel, not so much, but definitely my other channel. If you are interested in more of my life, I live in Korea. I travel as much as I can. I make weekly videos over there, just kind of my life. If you would like to give it a look, it's doing this thing where it's not showing a lot of people my videos. Even if they're subscribed, they won't get a notification, and then I will get a comment saying, wow, I've missed you. Like, you haven't posted in weeks. And I'm just sitting here like, every week. So yeah, if you're looking for just like chill videos, I'm over there. You also get like a behind the scenes of what happens on this channel, always linked down below. Thank you for your support always. So I'm going to just dive in. We actually started I didn't change my list. This is August. I started off strong with a kind of reaction video to Abby Jimenez. I feel like everyone online was talking about Just for the Summer. That cover is just so, well, we'll get into it. Not quite related to the plot, but something about that cover, like, I couldn't get out of my head. I wanted to read a summer romance. I was originally going to read it on the airplane. I went to Seattle last month. If you would like to see a vlog of that, it's on my main channel. Bookstore hopping galore. But I ended up not having time on the airplane. I just had too many books to read. A wonderful problem to have. I got home and I was kind of like, you know what? I can't just leave her sitting on my Kindle. Let's read Just for the Summer. But as I dug deeper, Just for the Summer is actually part of a series. Characters from the other books pop in, so I guess a series. I decided, why not read all three? Turns out, fun facts about Abby Jimenez, if you want to hear more, I have a whole video. She is a winner of Cupcake Wars on Food Network. What an interesting lady. Anyway, so I started off with Part of Your World. This is one that I'd heard of before. I believe that this was a book of the month pick at one point, and the synopsis didn't really interest me, so had it not been for this video where I was trying to read the whole series, I don't think I would have picked it up. I also think it's the weakest book in the series, but that's just my opinion. Some people have said that that's their favorite one, so give it a try. This is a very classic romance of busy big city girl and a small town boy. We follow our main girl, who is a doctor. She comes from a family of doctors. This is a legacy that is weighing heavily on her shoulders. And I forget what happened, like a flat tire, something. She accidentally runs into this guy in a small town where it's like a rainy day. She has to go in for shelter into this bar. This guy had moments before had just helped her with a flat tire. Now he's in the bar. Smells like fate. A one-night stand occurs, which is not her MO. She freaks out because as she goes to the bathroom, she happens to notice this guy's ID, and he is like, I don't know how much younger than her, but like, he's in his 20s and she's in her 30s. Like, this isn't crazy stuff, but she is weirded out, so she like disappears into the night, right? Cannot get this guy out of her mind. It's dual POV, so we know that he is suffering the same. And they end up trying to have this relationship that she just refuses to acknowledge that will work. You know, where you just want to take the main girl and be like, girl. So for me personally, I love a slow burn. I love yearning. And this was more of a insta love, or like instant attraction. And then we're just trying to figure out how we can make these two lives that seem incompatible work. I felt like beat for beat, it was well written. It was just what a romance should be. It felt like a nostalgic, like I'm homesick and I want to watch a movie that I've kind of loosely memorized, this kind of rom-com that I'm not tied to so that I can fall asleep. Does that make, that's like such a niche thing, but for me it was my big fat Greek wedding. I could put that on and like I don't care if I'm going in and out, It felt kind of like that. However, I will preface, I felt like this one was maybe the least traumatic, but in all of her books in this series, I don't know if it's all of her books in general, but in this series, she always delves into some kind of trauma or some kind of maybe a mental health issue or something like that that's quite serious. And I think that she handles them so well. I didn't really notice it in this one just because it was, like I said, maybe like the least traumatic in my eyes. But it just like kind of continues to get more intense. And again, I think she handles it really well. In her author's notes, she is thanking, or her acknowledgements, she's thanking all of the sensitivity readers, psychologists and therapists and everyone who have like weighed in. So she really does her due diligence, and I think that it shows. My only issue with Part of Your World is just that it wasn't my type of book. Like pressures from your family to maintain the family legacy. You've got a super crappy ex-husband, ex-boyfriend, like long-term horrible relationship that was emotionally abusive. Then we have like this weird age gap issue that isn't an issue in my mind. They just weren't things that necessarily speak to me, but like a solid book, okay? Like if you like romance and those things are calling for you, great job. What the heck? I had pasta sauce on my arm. Today's been rough, guys. That was Part of Your World. Then I dove into the next book, which is my favorite in the series, Yours Truly. This follows the main girl from Part of Your World. It follows her best friend. So we already kind of have context for Bree. Bree has a younger brother who has like a sudden onset autoimmune disease. He needs a kidney transplant ASAP. Forget what's up. Her mom is like super apt, like just not. We're not counting on the mom, okay? She's not there. And all of these people, by the way, are nurses. We're dealing with nurses / doctors. They're already stressed, okay? These women already have a lot going on in their lives. So yeah, and she's trying to get a new job, a promotion at the hospital, which seems like she's a shoo-in for. Like no one's put their hat in the ring for this promotion, when all of a sudden this new man doctor guy just like comes into the ER and is suddenly competition, and voila, we have our couple. It's again dual POV, and we follow Bree, who, like I said, is dealing with a list as long as my arm of things that would throw me over the edge. And then we have Jacob, who's really interesting because he suffers from clinical anxiety. He's medicated. It affects almost every aspect of his life. And because of that, he tries to clear up a series of misunderstandings. Bree's a little firecracker. Okay, so you don't want to be on her bad side. Jacob recognizes this. He's like, we got to clear this up real fast, okay? He decides to write her a letter because he writes better than he speaks. What continues is weeks, if not months, of back and forth letter, like passing notes. Literally, they have their little nurse lockers, passing notes in the lockers. I thought it was funny. I thought, as someone who suffers from anxiety, this was like the one time that I read a character that I felt like he got me. Like there were these tiny details that he would mention that I was like, holy shit. Like I've never seen parts of like those parts of myself in another character. She did like the most incredible job writing a character who has anxiety. Sometimes reading about people with anxiety makes me anxious, but Jacob has like a handle on it. Like whenever he talks about his anxiety, he talks about his coping mechanisms, and it just made me feel like, yeah, we can do this. And like the importance of having a partner who gets it. Oh, so good. I could go on and on. But yeah, if you like letters, kind of fake dating, randomly my least favorite trope in the world at the very end, which I got a lot of feedback that a lot of people changed their ratings. Like, this was going to be a 5-star book until the end. Totally feel you. I didn't like the ending, but it had already, like, I was too far gone at that point to, like, not love the book. So I agree that the ending, I don't know why it happened, but I just loved the book. I loved it. So that is yours truly. Next up is Just for the Summer, which, when I tell you that the darker themes, the trauma, the struggles, just gets worse with each book, that's what I mean. These are definitely not romantic comedies. I started off my video, my like reaction, being like, I'm here to read 3 romantic comedies, and all the comments were like, girl. We are following a friend. Okay, here we're going deep. Following a friend of Brianna's younger brother, the younger brother who needs a kidney, his friend. Okay, we've got another nurse as well. We have a traveling nurse. There's like a viral Reddit thread based like an "Am I the asshole?" thread, and she replies to it. And they end up like having a chat. The reason that they reached out to each other is because they are both cursed. Basically, his "Am I the asshole?" like, am I mad about this? His curse is that every girl that he dates, they like break up amicably, like it just not feeling it. The next person that girl dates is her soulmate. She gets married, goes off. Same with our girl. Dates a guy, they break up, immediately. Soulmate, married, happy, kids, the whole shebang. So they're both like, maybe we can break the curse. If we fake date, our curses will cancel each other out, and maybe the next person we meet will be our soulmate, right? How do you think that goes? This one was, like I said, a lot darker. We have a really toxic parental relationship. We have, again, with like just a lot of weight on your shoulders, having to take custody of all of your younger siblings that are like very young, and you are also a young guy, so like what the heck, just like a lot of things going on. This was truly just like a drama. Like it in the beginning has the setup of a romance. It has the setup of a romantic comedy, right? Like, am I the asshole? Let's break our curse together by fake dating. Like, that sounds like a rom-com, but it swiftly turns, and it's really just about relationships and love in all forms, whether it's between child and parent, between yourself. Really just covers a lot, and I thought it did it really well. My only issue was I went into it thinking it was going to be kind of a romantic comedy. I didn't 100% get the relationship. Like, these were just 2 nice, young, attractive people. That's it. Like, I didn't feel why the 2 of them, you know? It was just kind of like, okay. And also just a bone to pick with the cover. Like, that cover is so fun and so lighthearted, it gets ya. I have a lot of people in my comments were like, yeah, I thought I started a romantic comedy, and I was like crying on the beach. Like, people brought this for their like vacation read. It's an excellent book, an excellent story. Just not what I expected, but excellent work, Abby Jimenez. Thank you so much. She also name drops her own cupcake store in her books, which I think is fabulous of her. So yeah, good for you, Abby. We stand. After that, really quickly, I read The Lion Women of Tehran, and this, I went into it knowing that it's not my typical style of book that I love reading. I'm not a person that tends to love books that follow someone from like their childhood to their adulthood. Like, I don't like multi-generational stories, things like that. Like, I tend to like smaller snippets of time, or like we're following multiple people. But that being said, I enjoyed it. Like, I went in prepared for this to be like a good book that wasn't necessarily my style, but I wanted it for just kind of the historical context. You know, this is something that we don't ever read about in school, right? And I have family members that are affected by this. We follow a girl who was born in Tehran. Father dies, and so her family, her mom and herself, have to move to like the like grungier part of town. She makes a friend with this girl, and they are just like inseparable. So we follow her childhood, growing up, seeing through the eyes of a child all of these really subtle changes as the government is slowly like dissolving and overthrown, the rights of women being taken away, etc. She ends up being able to transfer to the better high school, so she kind of forgets her friend for a while until fate brings them together again. We end up following her all the way to the US. And yeah, even though I didn't love it, I think it also is really difficult when a book starts out with a like child as your main character, and like the narrator speaks as though they are a child. Like, we grow up with this character, so the way that she views the world, the way that she talks about things, like she was very stuck up, very sheltered, felt that she was better than everybody else, you know, throughout her entire life, kind of a difficult character to love. But I'm glad that I read it just in order to get more context for that moment in time, in that space in the world. I have a couple family members who moved to America during that time from Iran, so like, it's just even the simplest details of like what you're allowed to wear and how to get to the US and things like that. Like, it was just very interesting and a very easy read. Like, because we're growing up with her, something about the pacing of that was like quite easy to eat up. So that is The Lion Women of Tehran. After that, I feel like I've talked about this book so much because I was so excited about it. I read This Ravenous Fate. This is a book that I had heard about on Instagram. I think the author posted something like, I just got an agent, and I see a lot of those. Like, I see a lot of people talking about their books or like, wouldn't this make a great book, etc. This concept stuck with me. So once this came out, I was like, yep, we're reading this, thank you. This takes place in Manhattan in the 1920s. We are following two girls who used to be best friends. One is the daughter of this like steel empire. Her father learned how to make steel bullets that kill reapers, aka vampires. Other childhood best friend is a reaper. We kind of don't know how and why she got changed, but she did. And the best friends are no longer best friends. Elise, who I called Elsie throughout all of my other reviews, Elise comes back from a brief stint in Paris because she's a musician, only to be faced with a string of murders that she needs to solve, and she needs to solve it by teaming up with Layla, said ex-best friend. It is a sapphic romance. There's a lot of like gangsters and speakeasies. I will say that I personally really liked it. Like, I was just along for the ride the whole way, but I was definitely a little confused by what exactly was happening. We're trying to solve these murders, but we're also trying to solve like what creates a reaper. Like, it seems like it was a experiment gone wrong, and so we're trying to cure reapers of their vampirism, but maybe we should, I don't know. Like, that was a little confusing. I think if you're able to just kind of go with it, I feel like it will be cleared up in the second book. And I also mentioned that just the kind of scene setting was weird. Like, during especially the action scenes, we would have like Elise would leave the room and then she would just be back in the room. Like, she just kind of appeared and disappeared at different times. It felt like maybe like half of the scene was written and then half of the scene was written and we just didn't like check where are our characters, you know? So it wasn't a perfect book, but I think that the ideas were there, and our two main characters are Black girls living in the 1920s in New York. So we're obviously talking about racism, but there's also a layer above it of like, Elsie's fucking rich, Elise. All of these like white politicians are kind of buddy with her family. So there's like classism involved as well. I thought the romance was great. I think that some people were like, oh, it's supposed to be enemies to lovers, and they like weren't enemies for that long. I feel like if you have a best friend, you can never fully ever be enemies. This really felt like, oh yeah, like they stopped being friends, but they never stopped being friends, you know? I felt like it was very spot on for like an ex best friend to lovers kind of thing. Yeah. And I have a lot of faith for the second one. So yeah, that was This Ravenous Fate. I personally really enjoyed it as a debut. Happy I got my hands on it. Real quick after that, I DNF'd Quicksilver. I was reading it for a video where I was just reading enemies to lovers books to feel alive again. And yeah, not my cup of tea, unfortunately, because the concept was super interesting, but it just felt like there were literally hundreds of pages of just our main character being unnecessarily an asshole to our other main character, like the two romantic leads. I was 200 pages in and it started to get weird. A lot of that like abuse that is thinly veiled as like the, how do I explain this? Like there, like for example, there's a scene where Fisher, our main guy, is trying to awaken this girl's power. He puts her through a ton of physical pain. Like he's literally burning her alive in order to get her to like panic and awaken her magic. I see that a lot in fantasy, and I get that. Like I get that some people think that this is fine, and like what I'm not saying it's inherently wrong, but like for me, I don't like reading it. It's in the context of like, oh, he thinks you're strong. Like he has faith in you. He believes that you're stronger than you believe that you are. And he's just pushing you to a limit that he knows you can reach. And it's like, but he's also burning you alive. You know, like it wasn't romantic for me. And I thought that the, like I said, concept was interesting, but we never actually got there. Like the world building, it never actually happened. I read, like I said, 200 pages and I had nothing. If you want to know more of like what the book is actually about, you can watch my video, but I honestly can't even summarize. Portals to the fairy realm. Yeah. That was Quicksilver. So after that, I read Spark of the Everflame. I can't tell if this was just because I had read I had DNF'd a book that I really didn't like, or if this was like genuinely significantly better, but I enjoyed this. I said that I would be reading the second and third book immediately after reading the first book, and for some reason I just didn't. And I honestly have forgotten the story. It wasn't the right time. I don't know. I just don't feel like continuing it. Spark of the Everflame. We are in a world that has been, actually the world building's kind of interesting. We're in like the human world, okay? These gods came down. 9 gods all fell in love with a human, and their children became basically demigods. So the ruling class of this world, there's many different kingdoms. I'm gonna sneeze. Oh my God. Thank you. The ruling class of this world are all demigods. They all have powers. They all have like very specific eye colors depending on what kingdom you're from. And then we have the humans who are struggling, okay? The demigods are like not really doing it. They're not really great at taking care of the rest of the population, okay? So our main girl is a healer. A series of events leads her to just being pissed off enough to help the rebellion. And so now we get this kind of like, she's a spy, she's working in the castle as a healer, but what about this prince? There's all this tension. It hit the marks that I wanted it to hit. Thought the world was interesting. Thought the magic was interesting. I didn't understand the romance, but I was like okay to not understand the romance. I was excited to see where the story went, but I just don't know why after I finished it, whether, let me look, what did I read next? No, I don't know why I didn't continue it. I've heard mixed reviews about continuing the series. A lot of people say that our main character gets real annoying real fast, and I believe it because she was kind of annoying in the first one. There's slightly unbelievable things like she can just sneak through a heavily guarded castle into like locked rooms really easily, and it's sort of like, you know, but I am interested in like the dynamics of the rebellion. You know, I'm just So let me know in the comments, convince me what's going on. Should I continue? That was Spark of the Everflame. I believe it's all on Kindle Unlimited. Give it a shot. After that, I wasn't sure what to read. Why wasn't I just reading the rest of the Spark of the Everflame series? I don't know. But I read this in one day. I just kind of wanted a short book. This is Conspirator by Veronica Roth, aka Divergent. This is a retelling of Antigone, which I don't know about you, but it was required reading in high school for me. So I thought that it was cool in that context. Like this was a very interesting retelling of it. It takes place in a kind of futuristic dystopian world where people no longer have children. They go to like a gene bank. I don't know how to explain this, and that's part of my complaint. But we're basically following same story as Antigone, where we have a ruling family where the king has been killed, probably by his own brother. His brother takes over the throne, and the children of the dead king are thrown into chaos, especially the sons. I don't know how to like spoil it or talk about it. But anyway, my main issue with this, number one, a little short. And I know Antigone isn't long either, but it was so short that I think she maybe used that as an excuse to like not world build because I was so confused. Like, there is a huge part of this book that is about creating children using genes, and the siblings are bizarre because they were made like the normal way, which is apparently wrong, and like I don't know why, and I don't know what happened to the rest of the world. Like, the rest of the world is a wasteland. Maybe there's also like a spaceship. I don't like, it was very bizarre. I don't know where I put it, but sort of like When Amongst Crows. It was like, why is it this short though? Like, we could have added some more and I think it would have been really interesting. But as it stood, I wouldn't, unless you love Antigone, unless you're looking for a Greek tragedy retelling, I wouldn't run to get this. But it was like, there was something about it that was interesting, you know? There was something here, but it was sort of a disappointment that it wasn't there. Does that make sense? That is Arch Conspirator. I wish it had what I wanted. Next up is kind of a random choice. This was recommended by my friend Perry. Again, I just like wasn't sure what I wanted to read in like the middle of the month. I was kind of just like flailing, picking up any book I could. And this is Frenchman's Creek. This is by Daphne du Maurier, who I have read 2 of her books. One being, I read The Parasites last summer, and I always love returning to Rebecca. And all of her books are so different. I don't know why, because I think because I started with Rebecca, I just assume that she writes these kind of like almost gothic feeling, almost thriller-esque books. But The Parasites is very much not that. And The Frenchman's Creek isn't either. This one was a fun time, but not a favorite for sure. But like really interesting that she wrote this. I think she wrote this in the 40s. It's just like so interesting to think of the books that women were reading like 80 years ago now, let's say. I feel like there are women out there who like really needed this book, you know? So this is about a woman who gets married, has a couple kids, and her relationship is whatever. Like, her husband is sort of like blah, you know, but he really loves her, and they're just like in society in London doing their thing. And she is bored to tears. This is not her scene. So she starts to like be really destructive, and she like starts playing pranks on people. She's just generally like a pill, and she hates this about herself. Like, eventually she pulls a prank that she, in the middle of it, is just like, what am I doing? Like, I need to stop. And she decides that the best action to take is to go to her husband's estate out in the countryside and just like be away, like take her kids, take their nanny, and just like get out of town, literally. While she is there, she may or may not discover that pirates are using part of her like river. They're like very close to the coast, but like this little inlet, just to like hang out, just to like park their pirate ship and terrorize her neighbors. So we basically follow her through a few months of getting to know the pirates and like maybe becoming a pirate herself. And it's very, very slow moving. Very, I think like if you still have any sticky long summer days left, like it just felt so like slow and sleepy and atmospheric. But then very much like Rebecca, I feel like this is a very much a du Maurier move, is to have like a super slow atmospheric 2/3 of the book. And then the last third is like action. Oh my God, what's gonna happen? What are we gonna do? So yeah, it was like very enjoyable, but it's like difficult for me to recommend because it's so different from what I normally read and what I normally recommend. So I'm not sure if the people who like use my taste to pick up, like to figure out what the next book is, I can't guarantee that you would like this. I personally liked it, especially when I read it. Like, I was also bored at that time, so it was just like, I get you, girl. I understand. Yeah, that was Frenchman's Creek. After that, I DNF'd a book, which is not to say that it wasn't good, it just wasn't the right time for me, and that is In Universes. I've heard a lot about this book recently. I think I read like the first chapter, put it down, and then I ended up reading up to 40%. And it's one of those books where I feel like I kind of got what the author was trying to do and I appreciated it, but I was like, you know, I don't need to go on this journey with you, but I see you and I think your idea is really cool, if that makes sense. We're following our main character as she goes through all of these different universes. Like, her life is technically chronological, but each chapter we're in like a different dimension or a different timeline. So we start off with like a really normal girl who is like a researcher. Her boyfriend is somewhere way on the other side of the country. She has to be roommates with this like, I don't even know what he is, like a rugby jock guy. She starts this like friendship relationship with an old high school friend who happens to be living in this same small town, etc. And then like the next chapter, it's this dystopian world where we are living in another ice age, and she's married to the friend artist that she made, and like it's all the characters are shuffled. Like, it was a really cool idea, but just at the time I was like, I'm not going to follow this. You know, the concept, the writing was really interesting. I would be so interested to know what happens at the end. Like, what are we heading towards? Or is that the point? We just aren't really heading towards anything and we're just living, you know? I'm not sure. I've heard great things about the book. I just was like not in the mood for it. But yeah, if you're interested in these like multiple timelines, I'm pretty sure I put it down. I think the like Ice Age dystopia thing is maybe like 3 or 4 chapters in. I think I put it down once we hit the Ice Age, and like, yeah. But if you finished it, please let me know if it's worth going back to it. It was one of those things where it was on hold for a long time and I was stressed about returning it. I don't know. That is In Universes. Oh my gosh. And then coming in to save the day, if not the year, I've had a kind of meh reading year, as you guys know. Coming in to save the day, a futuristic fantasy / sci-fi, I'm not sure how I would categorize this, finished duology, sapphic romance, robot / superhumans versus humans, rebellion, revolution, immortality, secret. This was great. This was Criers' War. First off, it starts with like a proper timeline, like a history book, laying it out. Like, this person discovered how to make artificial life, if you want to call it that. And then there was a rebellion, and now the superhumans, or the autome, I think they're called. And now the autome are the ruling class, but now there's like all of these different political factions and like really cool. And I was a little worried reading that. I was like, shoot, am I gonna have to remember all these names and dates and events? But the way that she built the world, the way that it's written, you get it. I mean, like, it's very easy to understand what's going on in this world. Dual POV, we follow 2 characters. One is Crier. Crier is the autome, the designed child of the current king. She just found out that she's engaged to the head of one of the kind of dangerous political parties that is opposing her father. And like, Crier does not agree with this guy at all. He basically wants like extreme separation from the humans and the superhumans. And she's kind of like, can't we all get along kind of person. She's not very happy about that. She's also very not happy because she discovered that potentially while she was being designed, one of the designers messed with her blueprints and added extra emotions. Like, that is not allowed, and a really big secret and shame, and causing her a lot of stress, let's just say. On the other side, we have Anya, who is a human. Her family was killed in one of the numerous raids. It's kind of not super explained why there's so many raids, but like, the humans are just under constant threat of violence. And her family home was burnt to the ground, and she only survived because her brother got her out in time before running back into the flames. So her whole life is built around getting revenge. She's like, yeah, revolution, yeah, but I really want to kill this Crier chick. She's like, you killed my family, I'm gonna kill yours, Mr. King. So she is working her way into the palace to kill Crier. How do you think that goes? The memes, oh my god. And the rest of the book is kind of like political intrigue. How do we stop this crazy political party from gaining power, destroying human life as we know it. So finished duology, fun time. The second book was definitely a very different pace. I liked the first one more, but I was just so happy to be on that ride, and I loved the characters. And like I said, it's very memeable. Like, the romance is so funny because it's like one person is hell-bent on revenge and killing the other person, and Crier is just like, wow, Anya's kind of cute, you know? It's real funny. Not, like I said, the second book was like, not my favorite, but still I thought a very good time. That is Crier's War. Ooh, next up was a DNF only because my ebook was so messed up. So I'm just going to mention it in case it sounds interesting to you. I would like to read it once it comes out because this was an ARC from NetGalley, and the formatting of my ebook was just bonkers. And this is called How to Fall in Love in a Time of Unnameable Disaster. It takes place in New York City. Very absurd. Let's just start there, okay? There's a talking giant cockroach. All right, so there is some kind of environmental disaster, I believe it is. I forget exactly what happened, but there's some kind of like day after tomorrow-esque disaster. Our main girl is originally living in Queens, but she comes back into Manhattan to live with her family and kind of take care of them, leaving her partner, girlfriend, behind in Queens. And we just kind of follow her as she's trying to live through this. She really can't leave her apartment complex. There is a man with no head that is potentially a romantic partner for her. Again, there is a giant cockroach that speaks. I believe his name is Shin. I also believe that he gets a romantic storyline as well. Like I said, very absurd. But it was endearing and it really drew me in. So I only read 15% because I couldn't go on. But yeah, something to look out for that's coming out later next year, I think. How to Fall in Love in a Time of Unnameable Disaster. After that, the Book Censors Library. I picked this up in Seattle, and the person at the bookstore mentioned to me that this was kind of flying off the shelves. And so I was like, yeah, okay. Let me read this. This was a good time. I am so unsure of my feelings about the ending, but it's one of those books where it was worth the read anyway, you know? We are in a near future in which books have almost been completely banned. We're not allowed to talk about religion or government or anything that isn't based in fact. So goodbye fairy tales, goodbye any fantasy. Our main character gets a job as a book censor. He doesn't want the job, but it's the only job he's gonna get. And he's got a little girl and his wife to care for. So he becomes a book censor in which he just reads all day and like figures out which books are bad, right? He runs into trouble when he finds that he really loves books, and specifically books that are banned. There's someone else in the department that smuggles, like, that helps him read all of these banned books, and he just eats them up. Very much pulling on Fahrenheit 451 and 1984, but also like Alice in Wonderland, Pinocchio, all of these other weird books. I feel like if you like reading about books and you like reading about reading, you'd really enjoy this. Again, not so sure about the ending. I kind of like at the very end ended up skimming because I just was kind of bored, honestly, by the end. But in terms of just how we get to the ending was so fun. The panic of loving a book, you know, like, and what do you do, like, when characters feel so real and you're just, like, you just want to talk to someone about it? Like, how do you not talk about books that you love, you know? Yeah, this is the Book Censors Library. And I'm happy to announce, all of you guys can get out of my comments, I finally read The Daughter of the Moon Goddess and Heart of the Sun Warrior. We are following the Daughter of the Moon Goddess, and very quickly something occurs where she needs to leave the moon, go down into the other celestial kingdom. She's still with like the immortals, right? She needs to find a way to break her mother's curse. What can I say? First and foremost, I enjoyed the reading experience. Let's start there, okay? Don't worry by what I'm gonna say next. Lately, a lot of my complaints have been that nothing happens in books. We're getting so many pages and nothing happens in a book. When I say that this is the exact opposite problem, so much in this book. Oh my God, so much happens that I was kind of like, let's like sit with this for a second, or like I'd love to be in this arc of the story, this like action point a little bit longer, please. I felt very just like dragged along like crazy. It was absolutely wild. We're literally like 100 pages in, and this isn't really a spoiler. 100 pages in, we already have the inciting incident that gets her to leave the moon in the first place. There's like a Cinderella-esque storyline where she has to be like a maid in a household. We then get some kind of magical trial where she's suddenly competing against the upper echelon of the immortals in order to gain a spot in the emperor's household. And that, like, we just went like, so I was just sort of like, I wish it had slowed down. I don't know, like there were just things that like if we took this out and lengthened this, I would have like enjoyed the flow a little bit more. I don't know how to explain it. That being said, really enjoyed this one. This one not so much, unfortunately. This one got a little bit more into the romance, and I just didn't get it. I never came around to, there's multiple potential romantic partners, okay? Never came around to the one that is like in this one the most. And I honestly, because so much was happening, I was like each chapter, in a way it's very much like a fairy tale, because it felt like each chapter was like a quest, and we would then finish the quest within a single chapter. I was tired of how much was happening in this book. So I still really recommend it, especially the first one. I loved oh my God, the descriptions of the places, the descriptions of the food. Every single scene was set so beautifully. It was just action-wise too much for me. I know that I'm kind of like Goldilocks at this point. So much goes on. So much. I'm really excited. I definitely want to pick up. She just wrote a third book that's more of like, I think it's kind of like folk tales based off of the gods in this book. I'm not sure, but I'm definitely going to read that because I do love her writing style. I just was tired. Too many side quests for me in this book, but Daughter of the Moon Goddess, thankful to have read it. Thank you to all those who recommended it. After that, I had to hit my library books because a bunch of my holds came in at the exact same time. So I read You Exist Too Much. This was a heavy read. Trigger warnings abound, mainly because our protagonist is recovering from anorexia, and it talks a lot about her recovery, how you never really recover from an eating disorder. Her partner as well, they met in like a recovery program. So that is talked about a lot. But the rehab center that she's in for this book, she's in a 28-day recovery program for love addiction, essentially. So we kind of follow her story of her very toxic relationship with her mother. Our main character is Palestinian American, and so we kind of follow her childhood of going back and forth, like they'd constantly be going back either to Palestine or to Jordan, and her having to kind of straddle that upbringing of like being an American girl, but then also being held to the standards of her family back in Palestine, or like specifically her mother, what her mother thinks a good Palestinian girl should act like. What happens when her daughter is super queer and is like living with a woman, has asked her mom like, hey, what would you think if I married a woman? The mom is not having it. We're dealing with just like a love vacuum. I feel like any love that she receives in her life is just like diminished by her mother. So we are dealing with that on one hand, and on the other hand, just like how that manifests in her relationships. I'm not one to love reading about just like messy love lives. That's like never really a thing that I love reading about. And she's got a messy love life. Like, this girl is a serial cheater. She will always seek out partners that are unavailable. They are married women. They are quote unquote straight women. They are just in positions where those relationships should not be taking place. So I was most interested in reading about the mother-daughter dynamics than I was about her very messy life, but it was just a really well written book. I really appreciated a lot of her reflections on things, and like she knew she wasn't perfect. Like I appreciate when there's a messy character that is like, hello, I am a messy character. So yeah, I recommend if that sounds up your alley. You Exist Too Much. Kind of a rough, like a sad read, but nonetheless, happy I read it. After that, I'm gonna keep this a secret. After that, I'm still working on it, but I am doing a live reaction to a book series that is a cult classic, a little bit more under the radar than all the other series I've done. I'll let you guess. It is a young adult paranormal romance series, and that will be coming out next week. So you can decide, but I spent quite a bit of time reading those. Excited to share with you. So I'm gonna skip over that. Next up, I read an arc. I'm in another like NetGalley disaster where I just have too many arcs that I need to read. I picked up We Shall Be Monsters. This was refreshing in the sense that it was so closely tied to like a traditional fairy tale. I feel like a lot of the fantasy and even like fairy stories that we read nowadays are not. They don't have like a very fairy tale feeling to them, but this one really was. We follow, it's dual POV, one being the daughter, one being the mother. This mother and daughter live on the edge of the woods where there may or may not be fairy folk and all sorts of monsters, if you will. I don't know how much more I can say, but there is a curse that needs to be broken. There are multiple curses that need to be broken. My God, what a mess this book was, like in a good way, like lots to do. I actually really liked it. I think that if you're looking for like action, this felt a little surface level in the way that fairy tales are. Like when you're reading about like there once was a daughter had to go into the, like something about the kind of older fairy tales, we don't get like an in-depth feeling of who these characters are. I felt like at the end of the book, the person I knew the best was the mother, which is surprising because I don't always love reading like mother characters, and she ended up being my favorite character. I don't know how to describe it. I liked it. Very autumnal, very just like haunted woods. I don't know how to describe it. I did really like it, but I don't think it would hit for everybody. Like only if you're okay with a very like quiet fairy tale. Like that's really what it felt like. That is We Shall Be Monsters. I'm really sorry I'm not explaining that well, but yeah, I think it's coming out in November. So, and then finally, oh my God, I started this in August. I finished it last night. So technically we're bleeding into September. Today is September 3rd, but I don't care. I need to talk about it. You guys got me, okay? Thank you to everyone in the comments for being on my butt about it, wherever it may be. When I read Six Crimson Cranes, that is based off of a fairy tale. Everybody was like, oh, well, if you liked that, you would like Daughter of the Forest, because that is also based off of the same fairy tale. Oh my God. I just haven't read a book of that quality in a really long time. I think that recently a lot of the fantasies that I read, they tend to use language that sounds not modern, but like just the way that a sentence is structured, the same way I would naturally speak. Like it would be very normal for me to read any of those sentences out loud and it would sound like normal. I'm explaining this horribly, but the way that these books are written, it's written in a way that is meant to be read. It feels, you know, when you hear like a narrator from an older book speaking in just this lyrical way that you would never actually speak in a conversation, but it just brings you into this other time, this other mood. I loved her writing style. This was a hefty book. This was in the 600 pages range. We are following a girl who is the youngest of 7 children, and she's the only girl. She's got 6 older brothers, and she is in Ireland, and her father is like a lord of this particular plot of land that is surrounded by a forest. And so they're very protected. Like there's something strange about the forest where anyone who tries to come in gets lost, but somehow the family members never get lost, you know? But still, even with the protection of the forest, there is the threat of the incoming British, the Britons, if you will. No spoilers because this is based off of the fairy tale, but there is a curse that turns all of her brothers into swans, and it is up to her to break the curse. And one of the key components of the like curse breaking quest is that she cannot speak. She can't make a sound. She can't tell anybody about her curse. Classic curse move, okay? What more can I tell you without spoilers? I will say trigger warning, okay? I don't think this is a spoiler, but if you'd want to go in without knowing anything, be my guest. Just kind of mute me for a couple seconds. I'm going to say the spoiler in 3, 2, 1. There is on the page rape, pretty graphic, and it affects the rest of the story because it affects everything that she does from then on. Her mistrust of people, I mean, it even affects her relationship with her brothers. She's like, how can men be, you know? It is a constant in the book. It will always be talked about. I personally thought it was handled very well, but it is a huge part of the story and I had no idea. So yeah, that's my trigger warning for you, okay? That being said, I had no idea where this was going to go, and I was like sobbing at the end. This is technically part of a series, but the way that it is written, I feel like this is kind of a like I could read this as a standalone. Hold on, don't freak out. Take your hands off the keys, okay? I've heard that the second book is like the best. Everyone tells me that the second book is good. I will read it. Don't you worry. I actually have it out from the library, but I just don't. I kind of want to let Daughter of the Forest sink in, and I have other books I need to get to. I don't want to rush this book, okay? But how it's written is like, this is a story, Daughter of the Forest, and then we're going to have a little bit of a time jump, and we're going to follow another character within this world for the next book, okay? So I very comfortably am able to just like put the book down, walk away from the series for a little bit. So good. So good. Recently, I've found that after I put down a book, I'm immediately thinking like, what am I going to read next? What should I read next? For this book, I put it down and I was like, I need to just not read for a little bit. Like, I need to just let these characters, like, I was just returning to the book in my head. It's been less than 24 hours, but like, believe me, I will be thinking about this book for a long time. Really adored. This is not my first by this author. I also read Beauty and the Beast retelling that I forget the name of, but I very much enjoyed as well. So yeah, definitely love her work, and so happy to have like finished the month / started the month on such a high note. It did take me a long time to read though. I was pushing through it, but yeah, that is Daughter of the Forest. And that's what I read. September, I have so many, I'm panicking. I'm really panicking. I have so many books coming in on hold from the library. I don't know what to do. I also need to like pack. I'm going away. In 2-3 weeks I will be in Slovenia, and then I need to come home, and then I need to unpack, and then I need to get ready for my best friend to come visit me, her first time in Korea. So then I need to play tour guide for a week and a half. Like I'm not calm. But I'm happy. Just how am I going to read all the books that I have to read? A great problem to have. Thankful for my library, just my own fault for not shuffling my holds a bit better. It's so difficult for me because they give you the option to like, if you're not ready for the book, to push it back, like to just let the next person in line get it. But like, I'm so excited to read these books that I don't want to wait. So, I'm in a prison of my own making, okay? Those are the books that I read. Let me know how your August went. What did you read? What are you going to read in September? You guys gave me some really great recommendations in my autumn recommendations video, so thank you. And yeah, my teeth feel awake now, in case you were worried. Yeah, I'm gonna go edit this up and get it ready for you. So thank you so much for being here. And yeah, let me know what you think our next video is going to be. What slightly cult classic YA paranormal romance will I be reading with you? I'm excited to hear your guesses, and maybe that will give me some ideas for our next read. So, all right, from me and my new stool and my pumpkin spice candle, I'll catch you next week, okay? Thank you always.